Hi everyone, my name is Charles,
And I'm Dan.
and this is our sake show. This is an idea that we've been wanting to do for a while now, and due to current circumstances, this is the best way to go about it for us.
Thanks, COVID.
We are two friends that enjoy sake and shochu and Japanese whiskey, among other things. And we typically drink them together, but right now we can't.
And this is our way of drinking them together, and not only doing that, but hopefully telling y'all about some good sakes that we happen to enjoy along the way.
So we have a sake here today that we will be discussing, and if you want to know more about it and sort of discover it more organically the way that we did, then you can watch the documentary The Birth of Sake. It's on Amazon Prime. It came to like $6 or $7, and you would spend more than that for a single pour of any sake that I've ever seen at any restaurant I've ever been to. So it's money well spent. And we will soon find out whether the, what was it, maybe $90 that we spent for these two sakes to be shipped to us.
Shipping included?
Yeah. We will soon find out if that was also money well spent. For a little background, I work in media, so really my expertise here is that I have time to research things and learn things that I'm interested about on my own in my downtime. Dan has some more specific knowledge.
Yeah, and my expertise is I do research. I'm a microbiologist, and I work as a scientist doing research. And I'm also a hillbilly from Tennessee who happens to really like fermented things. So I'll be towards the end of the show, if you want to stick around towards to get a little bit more information about the fermentation process, the organisms that come to make this delicious alcohol that we're consuming right now, things that differences between sakes that you can, differences between fermentation techniques that can bring out specific flavors. I'll talk about that towards the end.
And I think that's sort of the idea that we're going to go with is review towards the beginning, and then some educational stuff, specific stuff that we can sort of discuss and hone down for you later afterwards as it pertains to the sake that we're drinking. But a lot of the information that I'm going to be referencing today and probably in the future is from this book, Sake Confidential. So I guess now we can get into our tasting, something that we have both been looking forward to for so long at this point.
See the way both of our faces just lit up? All right, let's crack this bottle.
This sake it's the Silver Mountain, and it is a Junmai, which we will discuss later exactly what that means. It has won a lot of awards. I found that it had won awards as far back as 2010 and probably earlier. So we are both pretty excited to try this one. On the nose, it's pretty sweet and a little floral, very like crisp and clean. I had read that the process that is used by this brewery for everything that they put out produces some slightly gamey and more wild tasting sake, which is something that I'm not picking up from the nose or how clean it is. I will try to show you how clean it is when there's a little less in my cup. So, kanpai, man.
Cheers, bud.
That was worth the wait. That is very, very good. Wow. Yeah, I'm getting some of the floral and the sweetness that I expected from the nose, but I'm also getting a little bit of tart. It's very crisp and very clean. It doesn't linger too long. This is pretty much exactly what I want in a sake.
This is my type of sake for sure.
I think
I'm getting a lot whenever I aerate it a little bit in my mouth. I kind of chewing on it a smidge. I get a lot of melon, and a lot of fruity flavors in there too, and that's my favorite type of sake that I've had. Is the type that has that sweetness to it. And try it again.
I think Dan and I like slightly different kinds of sake. We haven't really hammered out the details on what that is, but we know that we have a slightly varied palate and preference. But this is one that offers a lot. There's a lot of flavors there that I seek out personally, but it's also not so overbearing that I couldn't sit here and, if I were entirely unsupervised, not finish this whole bottle. So I will have to be careful not to do that. As for the clarity that I was mentioning, I'll see if this is at all visible on camera. Not really, not the best, but my glass, and I believe Dan's as well, has a target in the middle, and that is used to judge your. Yeah, Dan's got a better shot there. That's used to judge your clarity, and this is water clear. There's no coloration at all that I can see, and it's crystal clear.
Get any of that gaminess they were talking about?
As maybe the last thing that I'm tasting, it doesn't stay too long. I don't mind gamey, but sometimes if it's too gamey or like a really dense sake that has too much sweetness and gaminess, it can sort of put my stomach off. So I couldn't drink that much. This I will not have that problem with.
Oh no, this bottle will not last. Hold on, let me catch up.
It also pours a little thicker than I think I anticipated.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about the making this particular sake process?
This sake, and I'm going to look at the phrasing of this because, again, I don't want to butcher it. But this is a Yamahai, which uses airborne lactic bacteria rather than having it injected after the fact to in the brewing process. I think now something like 99% of sake is done by having the lactic acid made in a lab and then injected into the sake during brewing at a specific time in the brewing process, as opposed to having it naturally come in from the environment. But this is a old school style sake brewery. I guess in beer and liquor terms, it's a boutique to a degree, and so they get the lactic acid from the environment, which creates a lot of variation, or the possibility for a lot of variation. It makes it harder to control, but that's where you're getting this sort of wildness and gaminess at the end.
And also got a good bit of uniqueness because the microbiome of the atmosphere around will stay relatively consistent, but it's going to fluctuate with things like your season and your temperature and your ambient humidity in the environment. And all those microorganisms in the environment will change over time. And those changes can cause the bacteria and even the yeast to start to express different things like enzymes, things that they'll secrete out, like different type of volatile chemicals that they'll start to make. And a lot of those flavors and those volatile chemicals end up as flavors in your cup.
The other method that also uses a lactic acid from the environment is chemoto, but that is where they use a very labor-intensive hand stirring method, and this does not use that. They have equipment that does that, and I think from the documentary, it seems that they do have some sakes that are hand stirred, but this one might not be, and that could explain why it's not going to cost me several days worth of paychecks in order to afford, because some of the more high-end sakes can get very expensive. And this is, while this wasn't incredibly cheap, shipping disregarded, this was not unaffordable. I'm also, the more I try, I'm getting a lot more of that melon that you talked about, and I'm also getting a little gum, maybe.
That's the flavor.
All right,
that's the flavor.
I wanted to be sure that
I was
wasn't
trying to place that one.
I wanted to be sure I wasn't crazy about that. All right, well,
like a very subtle bubblegum
Yeah,
flavor.
yeah, and it's
It's
not overpowering. The
it's
sake
not super
itself.
sweet. It's not
No,
offensively sweet.
um, I will definitely have this again in the future. Descriptions that I read of this called it a connoisseur sake, which we hope to be at some point. But right now, we are both novices. We're just trying to learn. So please take the things that we say with a grain of salt and know that we are probably no better than you on judging these sort of things. We're just trying to learn and educate ourselves and probably getting a little drunk along the way.
And hopefully making sake a little bit more popular so that my local liquor store starts carrying even more sake, so then I can end up having more sake, reviewing more sake, and telling y'all how good the sake is.
I think if I had to guess, sake is probably going to follow the way that whiskey has moved in the past 5 to 10 years, where you used to be able to get a few dozen brands at a liquor store, but now it's a solid 25 to 40% of any liquor store that I go into, which doesn't hurt my feelings because the more whiskey they carry, the more Japanese whiskey they carry, and I like both. So, um, but I think we've both noticed that sake has become easier to find just in the past few years. Um, Dan just bought a house and lives kind of further out than I do. I live in essentially the middle of DC, so I have whatever is available in the city, and he has a more.
I can see cows across the street from the house right now.
But he sent me a picture of what was available at his nearest liquor store, and they have a pretty decent selection. So I think hopefully this is how the market's going to go, and I hope that we're catching it while it's still affordable and not at an incredible markup. But another thing that we wanted to talk about with this sake specifically is that it is a junmai. Junmai means that the sake is only made from rice, water, and the yeast that is used to brew it. And there's no added alcohol, and the rice is milled to a certain point.
That part about added alcohol is very important because some of the commercial sakis that you can end up getting, and like say if your first experience to sake was going to a Japanese restaurant and they give you the carafe of hot sake in there, chances are that had some added alcohol into it to increase the alcohol percentage. And some of those are pretty good. But if you're trying to go a little bit more towards the purest of the sake experience, then this is going to be your tier that you want to start at is your Junmai.
I remember a time, and I think about this a lot when I'm trying new things, that I had finished this book, Sake Confidential, and Dan and I went out for his birthday, and were, is there a kind way to say plastic? We were out there. We it had been a day. Um,
Trunk.
yes, yes, and we stopped at a liquor store on the walk home back to my apartment in the hopes that maybe they had some sake. And it was the cheapest table sake that is available that I see around. And it was cold. And I remember reading in this book that really, if it's being imported into the United States, it's probably not that bad. They're kind of not going to bother importing the worst sake that is available out there. So if they're bothering with it, it's worth a try. But what Dan was discussing is that a lot of the cheapest sakes have no milling. So they're just using the rice as it comes. And they have some added alcohol to build up the alcohol content and make it cheaper. So they're adding a good bit of alcohol, a neutral spirit, and they're also adding some water to bring the alcohol content when it's finished back down to under 16%. But there's a middle ground in between that sort of draft sake and junmais that has alcohol added, but it's for a purpose. It is in order to bring out some flavors, to minimize flavors that they don't want. I mean, it's a craft, and the people that are making this are doing this not always just because they need to increase their yield, but to bring out certain flavors. And there's really nothing wrong with that. So don't think that everything that you drink has to be Junmai, but it's a good place to start if you want to show yourself what some of the better options are.
And also if you want to look like you know what you're talking about whenever you're ordering food for dinner or drinks for dinner.
That can't hurt either. Asking for a Junmai, they will probably be impressed by your ability to order sake. So sake in Japan is called Nihonshu. Nihon being Japan and shu being alcohol. So it is the native drink to Japan.
Speaking of other things that end in shu, or something that sounds very similar, we're also very interested in shochu.
Yeah, we are really looking forward to being able to record something with that, but right now we're trying to find something that we can both get our hands on. Shochu is a much bigger niche right now than sake or Japanese whiskey. So you will have to find a place that will specifically market more than likely to Japanese drinkers in the United States.
And all these things were made with the exact same type of yeast and the exact same type of fungus. And that fungus right there is called aspergillus oryzae. Aspergillus, it ranges from everything between the black mold that you can find in your house that is very poisonous and can kill you, to the type of super radiation resistant fungus that you find in, say, Chernobyl, all the way to things that are used in brewing sake. And in addition to brewing sake, there's also used in producing miso and other things that you probably have had before, blue cheese.
I think it's also used in soy sauce as well. So the three things that most people are familiar with from a Japanese restaurant experience, miso, soy sauce, and sake, are all made using the same bacteria.
Specific aspergillus, the species, they can range in the type of volatiles, like I was talking about earlier, depending upon how they're grown and what they're grown on. As in the case of specifically blue cheeses, and whenever you put the cheese in a cheese cave to get the natural aspergillus in the cave onto your cheese to make it taste that deliciousness that you want it to be, those also fluctuate based on the different types of bacteria that are in the environment and the environmental conditions. There was very recently a paper that tried to domesticate this exact type of aspergillus. I'll put the link to that paper down at the bottom for all of you science dorks like me. It's kind of neat. They make cheese agar, which sounds delicious, if I'm being honest. But they actually try to domesticate the phenotype that you would expect. And phenotype is a characteristic associated with a specific microorganism. And they try to domesticate this phenotype, which would be that nice blue cheese color and the type of smell that you would typically associate with the cheese, in these organisms growing in a lab. Because these types of things are typically considered unculturable because they change their expression patterns depending upon their environment. So isolating and identifying the exact environmental conditions for growing the type of flavors and profiles that you want is something that sake brewers have been doing for many, many years. And scientists in the lab are now trying to replicate under more sterile conditions. I'll let you be the judge who does it better.
Which brings up a good point about this sake specifically, in that it was produced in Ishikawa Prefecture, and I have very limited knowledge on Ishikawa Prefecture, but I know that they are well known for producing sake. So this brand is beloved, but there are also other producers in the same prefecture. And they're also well known for candies, like very expertly made candies, which we also, my fiance and I watched a documentary about the candies that they made, and then when our bottle came in, I went, oh, and realized that they're from the same place.
Most of my experience with sake comes from Kyoto and sake breweries around that region. That's Kyoto and Osaka are the only two cities in Japan that I've actually been to, and I made sure to make the most of it while I was there and try as many different ones as possible. I will not be able to pronounce the names at this time, but we'll hopefully get to those in the near future on the show.
That brings up a point that I have thought about addressing, in that we, based on our backgrounds, have very different pronunciations. We are both hill folk. I'm from West Virginia, and so my pronunciation is not always perfect, in that I couldn't even just pronounce pronunciation, but that could be that I am a third of the way through this bottle of sake. And Dan is from Tennessee, so he also has some unique pronunciation on some of these, so you will have to bear with us if we mispronounce your favorite sake.
And it is pronounced Appalachia, not Appalachia. It is Appalachia. Cheers to that.
Which is also a flavor that I'm getting out of this sake. It's apple. Almost candy.
It's weird. Whenever you say it, they immediately come forward.
Yeah. And that was the one of the last things that I wanted to discuss, was pairings for the sake that we're drinking. I feel like this would go with essentially anything, and that is in line with the review from the website that we bought this from. Dan and I got our sake from truesake.com, that imports some of the best sakes that you can buy in the United States. Shipping wasn't overly expensive. They do a monthly newsletter that is very informative. If a neat piece of trivia for the COVID experience is that One Cups and Tedorigawa are some of the most popular sakes right now being sold by True Sake. They're some of the best selling, like top 10.
It was worth it, and this was also worth it. It is going on my list of top sakes that I've had.
Absolutely, yeah. This is one of the...
If I see it in a restaurant, that is what I will be ordering. Last thoughts. Looking forward to the next one. I'm thinking for the next one we'll try and review the One Cups that we specifically mentioned, because there are quite a few, and a lot of them are very good. Specifically with one, I'll tease a story for it for the next time. One very important One Cup in the context of this fella right here.
One Cup sake is probably the easiest way to ingest sake in Japan. If you're not going to a restaurant, it is probably how you're drinking your sake is a cup at a time. So it is some of the highest selling sake available, and that's probably where we will start our next video. So until then, we appreciate everybody watching, and please try this because it's good as
Good as you heard it here. That's our top ranking. Good as
Come by, good
Cheers, y'all.